200 kilojoules per square meter, which is the point at which organic materials like paper or grass can begin to catch fire. And for the acoustic effects, we set a threshold of 3 kilopascals, which is the point at which residential windows might begin to break. So we want to keep all blast wave overpressures, including caustics or constructive interference. We want to keep those below this value of 3 kilopascals to limit damage to people and infrastructure. And if these conditions aren't met, we just try redesigning the scenario, whether that means breaking an asteroid into more fragments or trying out different intercept times. We'll just kind of play around with it and see what we find out. So for the optical ground effects, to model the conversion of the asteroid's kinetic energy into optical energy, we use measured optical data from DoD satellite observations of small bolides to form a relationship between the two. And because the optical propagation is occurring at very close to the speed of light in vacuum, and the distance scale from the bursting fragment to the observer is on the scale of tens to hundreds of kilometers, we approximate the optical pulse as occurring nearly simultaneously at all observer points. We then propagate the optical emission from every fragment to the observer to get a total energy flux at the observer. And something really important to note is that we take an extremely conservative approach and assume that no cooling takes place between fragment optical pulses. So this means that the cumulative optical energy flux at the observer is calculated as the sum of the optical energy from each pulse. And in a realistic scenario, fragments would arrive on the order of tens to hundreds of seconds apart, which would generally allow for significant cooling. But again, we just make this conservative approach. And as for the acoustical ground effects, for computation of these, it's been shown that the acoustic effects from fragment airbursts can be approximated by those of nuclear blasts. So we base our simulations on measurements of equivalent nuclear blasts. And we model the time evolution of the shockwave using a Friedlander functional form based on the peak pressure at shockwave arrival time and the Friedlander positive pressure shockwave duration. And basically, to make a long story short, we include contributions from both the near field and far field and account for the pulse stretching seen in measured nuclear airbursts.
Can I really quickly ask you about the previous slide?
Sure.
What is the start of the process? Which block represents the beginning of that process?
Here.
Okay.
Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so at the end of the day, we end up with a simulation like this. So both boxes are looking at an asteroid that is 50 meters in diameter with an exoatmospheric velocity of 20 kilometers per second and average density of 2.6 grams per cubic centimeter. It's about the density of granite. So in the left box, we break it into 1,000 fragments 1 day before Earth impact. And in the right box, we simulate the acoustical effects from an equivalent unmitigated asteroid airburst. So the upper movie plots display the real-time pressure, where the time counter starts at the moment the first shockwave reaches an observer on the ground within the simulation area. And the cumulative distribution functions here show the frequency of occurrence of various pressure values. And note that in the fragmented case, the simulation takes into account any constructive interference from overlapping shockwaves. And we find that the fragmented scenario vastly decreases the acoustic ground effects. So in the fragmented scenario, we see an average pressure of about 600 pascals, with 1% of ground locations experiencing pressures at or above about 1 kilopascal, whereas the unfragmented case has an average pressure of about 5 kilopascals and a 1% value of about 16. So these results suggest that pi can be effective in terminal mitigation of smaller objects, and combined with detection efforts, could potentially prevent events like Chelyabinsk or Tunguska in the future. And again, we really want to keep our acoustic ground effects below that threshold of 3 kilopascals, and we see here that no locations within the simulation area reach that value. And on the other end of the spectrum, simulations also suggest that pi is capable of mitigating much larger asteroids, given slightly longer intercept times. So this is a 500-meter diameter asteroid broken into 100,000 fragments with an intercept 60 days before ground impact. Now, of course, this is a much larger asteroid, so it, of course, would not airburst. It would, in fact, impact the ground, which would be a much more damaging scenario. And while this intercept is certainly longer than the last, again, this is 60 days versus 1 day, it's still, relatively quick. That's just on the scale of a few months. versus, the decades that it may take to use other planetary defense methods if necessary. And if an asteroid of this size were to impact Earth, it could pose a yield comparable to Earth's entire nuclear arsenal, just to sort of put that in perspective. So, we see here again that fragmentation really seems to work. So in the upper left, we again see the real-time pressure. The upper right movie plot shows the maximum pressure, where each pixel holds onto the highest pressure value it experiences throughout the length of the simulation. And we also keep an eye on the real-time pressure distribution and the minimum and maximum pressure, just to keep an eye on things as they occur. And again, the cumulative distribution function shows that the pressures experienced throughout the scenario are reasonable, with an average of about 800 pascals, a 1% value of about 1.5 kilopascals, and a maximum around 3 kilopascals. Again, we really want to keep everything below that. So this is kind of pushing it. We want to keep things lower than this, but even still, certainly a much better scenario than, if this asteroid were to impact, which of course, if a 500-meter asteroid is coming, we're going to see it much, much farther ahead of time than 2 months, or, even several months. Like, obviously, our situational awareness for objects of this scale and larger are much, much better than for smaller objects. But just as to provide further context, our simulations do show that fragmentation of even larger asteroids can be beneficial. And as for the optical effects, here we're looking again at the 50-meter asteroid cases, with the fragmented case on the left and unfragmented on the right. So the upper movie plots display the real-time optical energy flux, where the time counter again starts at the moment the first optical flash reaches an observer on the ground. The bottom plots are again the cumulative distribution functions, and we find that, again, the fragmented scenario really decreases the optical ground effects compared to its unmitigated counterpart. And again, in the fragmented scenario, we see an average energy flux of about 10 kilojoules per square meter, with 1% of ground locations experiencing energy deposition at or above about 30 kilojoules per square meter. And in the unfragmented case, we see an average of about 100 kilojoules per square meter and a percent value of about 600. And again, we see that fragmentation seems to really work to decrease the ground effects to manageable levels. And in unmitigated cases, like for Chelyabinsk, the optical output caused retinal and skin burns for those who were outdoors and unprotected from the flash. And, it seems that mitigation via fragmentation could help to decrease similar potential damage. And, of course, the best and most consistent protection from optical damage or even acoustic damage is to stay indoors and shield your eyes or your ears. But in a hypothetical terminal defense scenario like this, it seems like a reasonable assumption that we could establish preventative civil defense measures to further mitigate potential damage to the public, comparable to the alerts given before a solar eclipse, as I'm sure we were all aware of a few months ago. And again, just to show that larger scale of the spectrum, this again is that 500-meter asteroid in 100,000 fragments with a 60-day intercept. And yeah, we see the same sort of thing that the cumulative distribution function again shows us that the energy flux experienced throughout the scenario is reasonable. So here we see an average of about 10 kilojoules per square meter, 1% value of about 40, and a maximum of about 110 kilojoules per square meter. And again, our damage threshold for the opticals is about 200 kilojoules per square meter. So we're well below that, which is great. And yeah, really just to conclude, our simulation suggests that Pi could represent an effective multimodal method for planetary defense that really could prove effective in a wide range of threat scenarios, spanning both asteroid size and warning time. And it really represents the first planetary defense strategy that is capable for not only multimodal use, but particularly use against short warning threats. And, we see that mitigation via fragmentation really works to decrease the potential damage level of these optical and acoustical ground effects in comparison to their unmitigated counterparts. And again, these are the same QR codes that Sasha showed earlier. But yeah, that's what I have for you. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Thank you, Brin. Very, very nice analysis. We do have a question online from Lisa. Lisa, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes. Hi, Brin. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. Can you hear me well?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm up in the northern mountains of California, so I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to ask, I'm in the location of the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve area and also in your community as well, throughout Vandenberg Air Force Base. And I'm very involved with the JPL Exoplanet Watch and AAVSO. So the asteroid near Earth objects, we are also watching from the ground, as well as the micro observatory devices on an international basis. And one of the things we have is the Light Sound Project with Alison Barilla, and we use C++ and Python for blind, visually impaired, deaf, hard of hearing, low vision impaired, and we implemented devices and usage for individuals to use C++ and Python that is adaptable and usable in GitHub and also with database management. Would this be something applicable or offered for individuals from the disability community to participate with the supercomputer and with your program?
Yeah, so these codes and simulations that I'm showing here actually have not been run on the supercomputers. So these simulations are actually, we run them either on our lab machines or on our personal computers. So in regard to accessibility, all of our codes are also up on a GitHub channel. So I'd be happy to share that with you if, if you would like to disperse that and have others involved. Or of course, if anybody would like to be involved or gain access to the codes, like please reach out to me. I can, I'd be happy to either answer you in chat and give you my email, that sort of thing. But if I understand your question in regard to accessibility of the codes, we're happy to share it, and it's not, it's not terribly complicated. Like I said, I can run it either remotely on our lab computer or on my, on my Mac laptop. It's not too intensive, and it's fairly simple to input individual, asteroid and fragment parameters. So we can certainly talk more about that offline if you'd like.
Okay, that would be great. And I'll put my information in the Q&A if that's accessible.
Perfect.
There is the opportunity for National Science Foundation grant funds for teenagers, older students, and individuals to learn. So that is also the opportunity to get involved with the older students to learn. And that's one of the things that I can contribute and also teach through this opportunity and share to get the older students to get involved and have a better core base going forward. So wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brin. We have another question from the audience here now.
Hi, Brin. That was a good presentation again. Good work. I have a couple of questions. One of them is a slide that you showed early on, and it's just it's not so much your work; it's something that you're repeating. Other people have said too, which is what are the odds of these impacts? And it's the Chelyabinsk. You had a certain range of probabilities, and it was like 13 years ago or on the order of 10 years ago, and yet that's a very short. There it is. There it is. What are the odds? Impact 50 to 100 years, but it happened about 10 years ago. And Tunguska, so it's at the very low end of that range. Tunguska also, you've got it happened roughly 100 years ago, and the interval is 300 to 1800 years. So it's, is there an order of magnitude misguidance in this estimate. And I know the estimate isn't yours, but I just want to plant that seed that maybe maybe these hazards are more significant than people estimate. And what I've heard before is that some people think they came from Encke's comet, and it was hard to observe any of these bodies that are from that comet because they're close to the sun, as I think you mentioned earlier, that they're, that you don't see these hazards coming when they come from grazing the sun, essentially. So that's just to comment on that. That was the thing that hit me as you presented it.
Yeah. Yeah, that very well may be the case. This is certainly not, the core of my study of, estimating impact intervals. I believe the numbers I present here are from a study by Peter Brown and one other whose name is escaping me. But, it may well be that these intervals are not correct and need to be adjusted. I certainly am not in a position to be able to, say that with certainty. But, it also could be the case that two incredibly rare events could occur near each other simply just because that is, I don't know, the way the statistics may work. But yeah, it very well may be that they need to be adjusted. I'm not certain, but I'd love to look into it.
Yeah, the other comment was that you could have your duck and cover type strategy, like when I was a kid, you got under your desk to rehearse for a nuclear bomb, right? It was. And if you know this is coming, you had enough time to send something out there to get in its way, so you have an hour's notice or some reasonable amount of time before it gets there. You could certainly send out warnings to people that go lay in their bathtub or whatever it takes, to escape the injury.
I agree. And did you finish your question?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I found both Sasha and Erin's slides very interesting. And when I watched those projectiles and the commotion that followed when the whole thing buzzed, I was curious. Have you looked at some nuclear codes that may have been generated by folks at Los Alamos? Because what I remember from discussing impacts with that, do you guys know who John Lewis was? John Lewis?
Not familiar, no.
Fire and Brain. What was the books he wrote? Anyhow, John Lewis. Yeah, Fire in the Sky. That's right. Mine in the Sky. And so one time I posed this question to him and said, well, what is the ground effects you would see from a cometary fragment impact? And he said, again, and the same thing I've heard before, which is pure dust. Everything fragments, because I think Sasha presented some points in a plot where he said that, essentially what happens is that the transition of energy is so quick, so fast, that all of these bounce around things come much later, Mark. And that mostly everything fragments to ash or to extremely fine particles. And I heard this from Mike Gruntman too, that in the instance of a nuclear blast, you don't have anything but dust, fine dust. And so I think we're dealing with energy, propagation. That maybe another reason to produce another paper with your wonderful professor.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you for your question. We actually have been looking into nuclear mitigation scenarios. So I've actually been running Lawrence Livermore's Livermore Weapons Activation Code, or LWAC. So I've been running that through the NASA Ames supercomputing facilities to simulate a wide variety of nuclear mitigation scenarios. My only reasoning for not presenting that here is just because that's sort of, we're still in the midst of performing that parametric study. but we're currently working on a paper that we hope to get out by the end of this year. So yeah, I'd certainly like to go further into length, but of course don't really have the time or space to do so here. But if you'd like to discuss it offline, I'd certainly be interested. And yeah, certainly keep an eye out for a paper coming from our group, hopefully, as I mentioned, within the next few months or so, covering a handful of different nuclear mitigation scenarios, both both fissile and thermonuclear. So it's certainly interesting.
I had another comment that you mentioned that Tunguska was a butterfly pattern, and a lot of the Martian craters have a butterfly pattern also. So they have, maybe it came in at a more glancing angle and then spread out sideways into that butterfly shape, or into a water-soaked media, liquid media. Was one of the questions, but it was, I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, that I haven't heard your side before. That's super interesting. I'll have to look into it.
Thank you. Lisa, have you raised your hand again for another question? Or is it the same?
No, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful day of learning. I really appreciate this. This is tremendous information, and I'm glad to see that FEMA's involved, the NASA supercomputing group is involved, and this is a wonderful community of everyone finally coming together and for a full day mini conference. And I think that there's going to be a lot of collaboration going forward. And it's something that we truly need to pay attention to with our planetary defense program, and really supporting our communities. And at the local level, the state level, and at the federal level. And even having FEMA involved is a wonderful, good thing to have involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Very nice words, and thank you, Brin and Sasha, for your talks. Amazing things.
An applause.
I have a feeling that the Santa Barbara team and aerospace will talk again.
Please.
So for now, I think we are just about near the time where the library will be closed here, no? 5:30. Oh, 5:30. Okay. So we have time.
And before we disperse, we'd like a group picture.
A group picture. Yeah. So, but before we do a group picture, I have a few minutes to wrap things up. Yeah. Are there any questions online that anybody would like to ask before we just do the wrap up?
I have a couple that are still hanging from much earlier today.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay. The first one. Let me get my focus back here. The first one.
Who is speaking?
This is Merlin Dorfman. I'm with San Francisco section. I live in Livermore.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. One of them was, as far as the Sunshade project, I wonder if they had looked at putting objects into sun-synchronous orbits much closer to Earth, a few hundred miles, which would surely be logistically much easier and cost much less, versus trying to put something up at L1 and maintain it there. You would lose half the orbit when the sun-synchronous orbit was in the shade, but you would get you'd be covering at the highest point of the day as much as you could with the however many sunshade satellites you put up. So it's a cost and what would you say, logistical question, but I think it has the potential for working just as well. That was one question, and the other question I had was, let me find it here. The question about imaging Apophis with Hubble or Webb. I think that got answered. That the 0.1 arc second is just not enough resolution to do much with Apophis. But I think the question about using a sun-synchronous orbit rather than Lagrange point is still open.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll convey to Morgan. He left the room earlier. but we can send this suggestion to him, which is very interesting, to use sun-synchronous orbits rather than L1. I don't think he mentioned any of that, but it's very interesting position. And that's Merlin, right? Merlin Dorfman was taking?
Yes, Merlin Dorfman.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's recorded, right, Ken? Everything is still recorded, so we have those questions. Yeah, okay, I will send this question to him and maybe try to connect between you and him for the answer.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thanks for organizing. I really enjoyed the day.
Thank you so much.
And Nahum, I think to Merlin, he may want to look up, you may also want to look up some of the work from Roger Angel, I think. Also suggested sunshades. And then more recently, the Deepak paper, Ravi Deepak and what's that professor's name from Komarat Narayanan had a paper about similarly reflecting stuff in low altitude. They didn't want to go into orbit. They wanted flying vehicles reflecting on.
Yeah, by aircraft that are perhaps electric powered, solar powered, electric powered, and just trail sunshades behind. Yeah, that would seem, fly those at 60, 70, 80,000 feet, that would seem to have a lot of potential as well.
Yeah, interesting thought.
Okay, thank you.
None of this,
I may have the paper, yeah.
oh, if you can maybe share it with me and right here, that would be nice. Okay, any other comments or conclusions for him? Yeah. A question for me, okay, so would you like to ask it on the web?
Sure. Come to the mic.
Notes all day, very useful information. So my questions for you are on those, you presented your work on from Aerospace Corp, the disk sats. Those disk sats are very interesting new concept. Obviously, satellites have been conventionally cube-shaped or rectangular. And I believe his name is Roger Hunter from NASA Ames. He's like the head of the CubeSat development at NASA. He's working on these sats as well. But my question was, one of them is, how much delta V can these actually store? Because given the small volume constraints from a mechanical perspective, like, are these going to be mainly chemical or electric propulsion, and how much delta V can they have in order to actually reach upon this in the first place?
Yeah, so the question was in terms of the delta V and propulsion system. I'm not the expert on those hardware systems, but my understanding is that they are capable of about kilometer per second delta V, and they can use electric propulsion as well. So I think that it's either electric propulsion or small thruster to just do orientation, but for orbit shaping, it's going to be electric propulsion.
So the other question I had was, I guess we can talk about this another, but I guess this is a question and kind of a story. Back in my day, I was doing my graduate research at the University of Toronto Space Flight Laboratory, and we had a graduate group there. We were working on developing an Apophis flyby mission, a group of 6 satellites to go up there and do flyby inspection. And one of the interests of the payload was to do gravity measurements, gravimetry, between laser communication, the time differential between laser communication between 2 satellites on either track of the trajectory of the asteroid. Is there any interest in doing gravimetry or like gravity measurements for mass validation for these asteroids, and either Aerospace Corp or others, for especially this Apophis flyby?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. There is a lot of interest in measuring the mass of Apophis because that determines how fast can Osiris apex merge into the rendezvous trajectory with it. Because of the uncertainty with the mass, they're going to do it very, very slowly and do gravimetry until they have nailed down exactly how close they can get without colliding with the object. The fastest they can assess the mass, the faster they can get into the rendezvous. And so if you can help them with mass assessment before the approach, that would be super useful. So I think to do that, you would have to do another rendezvous. So that is challenging, right?
The flyby can do it, right?
A flyby potentially can do it by measuring the effect of the light, yeah. So a flyby of a few of these could potentially do something. Did you?
still have your presentation.
Oh, no, it's not going to be, my presentation is, I'm going to do something on the web for conclusion. I don't need
Do
to.
you want to do that first? Final question.
Sure, yeah, we can do a quick summary before we have any final questions. Did you want to take a picture of everyone or?
Yeah, I think people are gonna leave now, and
Yeah,
Ken
okay.
likes the picture first, and then you can see.
Let's do picture first and then we'll
Well, if you do that, people will leave.
save the.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, so how do you want to do it? In front of the screen kind of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
All right, and we'll just stand there and take a picture. All right.
Let's go to the picture. All right.
Yeah.
Kieran and Carol?
Yeah, he was a instructor of mine from my grad studies, and he also works at here.
And I got a
Yeah,
special
right now.
t-shirt that I used to be so.
Oh, good.
That's right.
Yeah, maybe, no, it's more.
No, actually, that was
I'm not in
his.
there.
No, don't worry.
Please, we still have one more presentation.
It's going to be 5 minutes.
Something else that was, should we not block all the people online? Well, there's something.
Okay, guys, let's see. Now, I'm gonna show a very
So
special.
SpaceX shirt?
That's right.
Yeah, you gotta show this one.
Okay, guys, get. Can you see this?
Yeah,
Oh, this is bad.
or we crowd in a little bit.
Okay, cheese,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, more, 1, 2, 3, change camera.
Uh,
Alright, very nice one. 1, 2, 3, another one, it's charging.
This? Oh,
Okay,
battery
one.
did that.
2, 3,
Okay.
one more.
Oh, come on.
1, 2, 3. Excellent, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now to Nahum's.
And
Yeah.
final 5 minutes.
I was originally from Canada. Yeah.
Which I think I can do for you, I guess.
And then you need to share what's your screen.
It's pretty good. Yeah, very cool. I work on
Yes.
do SSA.
Nice to see you again.
You gotta do it.
Huh?
You gotta get together.
That would be good, yeah.
Very good, yeah. Research lab I went into is very hands-on, so I was taking part in
So we were
mission,
initially like the
the
two
hypothesis
looking
translation.
sort of Pasadena. It was the startup was basically a spin-off from Caltech. Caltech's cost lab.
They're doing like a gravity
Gas. So yeah, basically, then we are found. So I was initially part of the so we are doing regular drones for last mile logistics.
It just shows the
Payloads around, so we have like different varieties. So one is 45 pound payloads, and we are also like working towards one.
But it has more.
So it's 3 different fields. So
10 times stronger.
It's high density.
Yeah, well, it's close to 25 miles, 45 miles.
Yeah, those big settings.
I just like.
Number one was the
Maybe
big
shutting
sources.
you. Okay.
They were so far away, it didn't cause it
Engineering.
shut down the power.
Yeah,
But it was on, it was only light years.
I finished.
Oh,
It could have like done, just imagine it's one of the light years on that. It's pretty far.
Like that audio, company.
Still small, that's pretty cool. What made you come here?
mainly the work. So I graduated with my master's on nuclear, started working in California. Biggest nuclear space, so this has gotta be here.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, 5 minutes of wrap up. Thank you, everybody. I think this was a wonderful networking opportunity to first of all share the knowledge about asteroids and make connections between different organizations and people who are involved with the Planetary Defender community. Thank you for so many questions that you had. We should probably talk again. So please make contact with me and let's talk more. And I'm going to have 4 web pages that I'm going to share with you as a wrap up for today. The first one is related to the Planetary Defense Conference that we are organizing next year in South Africa. Here is the webpage for the conference. I'm going to slide down just a little bit to show you what we are planning to cover at the conference. And so, as Brent Barbie mentioned earlier, we are both 2 of the co-chairs of the conference, along with another international people. The main topics that are covered are listed there, and they cover the whole range of planetary defense from detection, characterization, missions, campaigns, disaster response, policy, legal, and missions that are ongoing and planned. And so I invite you to go and visit this webpage. It's being developed now. Soon there's going to be call for papers. And after the conference, the entire conference will be recorded, and all of the presentations are going to be loaded to the database, so you can look at it. You can go to the previous page, previous conference, and all of the presentations and the recordings should be available there. So that's one thing that I wanted to share with you. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is to go live on the CNEOS webpage and basically show what I showed earlier. This is a wonderful resource to basically just peek every once in a while and see what's going on around the planet in the near future. So as you can see here, this is just a few of those 35,000 near-Earth objects that are currently on the catalog. Some of them are quite large. A lot of them are fairly close to our planet, and we basically live in a shooting gallery, right? So it's a question of when one of these will be aimed at our planet, and we would like to be prepared and not wait for the emergency to start building those countermeasures, right? So that's something that we advocate is be prepared, right? We would like to be prepared before emergency.
On this website, do they provide the ephemeris?
Yes. So yeah, if you choose each one of those, any of these objects here, and you click on the left, for example, this is an interesting one, which I looked at it earlier today, and I highlighted. This is a fairly large object right there. It's about 100 to 150 meters. An object like this will destroy a country. It will destroy a country the size of France, Texas, things like that instantly. And if you look on the left here, it was discovered this year, sometime this year, 2024. So you don't have a lot of time to deal with that type of scenario if you don't have something ready, similarly to what the Santa Barbara team has just shown, right? To blow it out of the sky with very, very extremely short warning.
Marine, can we use like
I know we have a lot of military bases around in California, especially around the United States. I know we can carry around the world with our allies. Can all of our military launch every missile we have toward the asteroid, and even little pieces fall in, we can still use lasers to detect it and still not them.
So the question is, can we use existing technology to shoot down the asteroid,
Yeah,
right?
like we have these UVs that detects like small pieces, like like little missiles or planes from far distance, and we have these radars that the Navy uses to detect like when we use wars today. We can use the same infrared to detect small objects falling from the sky, and we just shoot down with lasers or any missiles we have. Like I know we have missiles go explode and shoot shrapnel like metals, because that can take care of the small pieces.
Yeah. So we think that you cannot do that without designing the system to specifically shoot down such fast approaching objects. We just don't have the capability. It will be just pure luck if we were able to hit an object like this with what we already have in storage, right? We don't think it's sufficient. We just don't think we have the capability. We have to develop it to be able to have a chance of doing that.
Sorry,
One more question, yeah.
Relative magnitude, like apparent magnitude of these objects, like compared to like star rate or solar system planets, like are these relatively bright objects?
Very low. I mean, like different
very low
solar systems.
Harush, you have told us, I mean, if you look at the imagery, I think they need to expose very long cameras.
Some of the asteroids are some of the asteroids are very, very faint, and so you cannot catch them on a very brief observation. You'd have to really watch them for longer periods of time to get enough photons into your image.
But these are improving, right?
Let's say do in-space tracking. Keep the exposure longer. You could theoretically
I know that in Hawaii they got some new CCDs that are.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's improving, but the notion is that without space-based detection, we are not going to get there soon enough. And so there is a mission, NASA mission that is NEO-SM, NEO Surveillance, and it is a funded mission. Amy Mainzer. Yeah, that's a mission that NASA is going to launch in the next few years. It's going to be put in L1, and it's going to be infrared based. So it's going to look at the, at the heat reflecting from those objects, not just the optical light. And they think that within about a decade and a half, they're going to increase the number of known objects by an order of magnitude. That's not possible with optical telescopes. No matter what you do on the ground, ground-based, you will not be able to detect so many as possible from space. Space-based. So look it up, or get in contact with me. I will link to you. And there was a question about the ephemeris, right? Was it you? Okay. So if you go to any of these objects and you just click here on the left, it will take you to another page which will give you the ephemeris for each of these objects. As you can see here, you have the orbital elements and the first observation. So when I looked at this morning, I was surprised to see that the object was first observed in 2014. And how come it is marked as 2024?
Maybe they needed 2 observations, another projection.
So my guess is that they probably discovered it this year and gave it 2024, but they went to archived pictures of the sky that exist for decades and said, let's see if we just didn't detect it 10 years ago. And apparently it existed in those archived photos of the sky 10 years ago. Situations like this, they have a special name. They are called recoveries. Recoveries, right? So we discovered them before they were discovered because we really saw it for the first time sometimes this year. But the data for it existed back then. And so if you only had more sophisticated programs to scan through those pictures in a more efficient way, maybe it would have detected it before 2024 and will tell us, oops, get ready for that size object hitting LA in 10 days, right?
So who is doing that work?
Which one?
Recovery.
Recovery, anybody, I mean, this data, I think, like University of Arizona has doing that, NASA is doing that, ESA, the European Space Agency, are doing things like that. The database exists, I think, worldwide. It's a Spacewatch type of thing. So everybody has those things. And some people are applying artificial intelligence algorithms to help extract undetected objects from those pictures, which have many, many thousands of little dots of light in there. Go figure out which one is just moving slightly against the fixed stars. So that's something that is interesting. So yeah, the ephemeris for all of these objects is residing on the same database. Plus, JPL has a database that's called Horizons. Have you heard of it? And Horizons have a lot more rich data about each of these objects. In a tabular form, you can download it, and historical information, and you can do research on this and design missions on this. So Horizons is a good resource.
Thank God we got astronomers. So. Very good verdict.
Okay, one more thing that I wanted to show, a couple of more things, is that so because we are having so many objects out there that we saw and growing, we are designing exercises every conference to practice the process that would be applied when an object is discovered aimed at the Earth. And so, as you can see here, starting from, I think, 2013, there were a good amount of exercises from conferences and tabletop exercises where usually JPL experts invent a hypothetical asteroid that is designed to impact with the Earth, put it on a different type of orbit. Each orbit presents a different challenge, and they take into account the telescopes that would have detected it, and when is the object observable, when it is not observable. They put it on an exercise like this, and they employ other experts who calculate, when can we put out a mission to reconnaissance the object, collide with the object, intercept the object, rendezvous with the object, and if the object hit the ground, what are the consequences, how many fatalities, which area do we need to evacuate. They collaborate usually with FEMA, right, the Federal Emergency, and they learned how to talk to one another. NASA and FEMA in those exercises, they are now becoming international exercises. And so that's a very, very key practice that is done at every conference to see what is the process that we would have to engage to address an emergency situation. So again, I invite you to go and visit. Each one of these will have a lot of information about it. So having been involved with the area for about 20 years, and I developed a class at Aerospace, Planetary Defense Introductory class, and one day a couple of IMAX producers landed up in my class and said, let's see what this guy is doing, right? And as a result of being in my class, he said, can we put your class in our movie? So there is an IMAX movie that was resulted, and I'm going to show the trailer for it now. I don't know why we cannot hear the sound. Oh, share computer sound, okay. Can we do that?
It wasn't until a couple hundred years ago we even knew that asteroids existed. Finding asteroids before they find us is critical. We use telescopes to take pictures of the night sky. A moving point of light reveals an asteroid.
We use this radio dish antenna. From the radar echo, we can determine their shape, orbit, and size.
Preventing an asteroid strike requires engineers of every discipline and a lot of teamwork. No idea is too crazy.
IMAX invites you to learn about the science, the technology, and the heroes who are Earth's secret weapons.
So this is an IMAX that was produced in 2019, 2020. It was supposed to come out. Yes, that was me there. And in the movie, I have another 15 seconds. And it was supposed to come out in 2020, and you know that COVID happened. And so everything got pushed out, and the movie is slowly being released in different places. It was playing at the California Science Center for about a year and a half until they took it out. So if it comes to a theater near you and you go see it, you will recognize somebody in the movie. So
and one of the images had the 60-inch Schmidt at Mount Wilson.
Yes,
and
yes.
I just had an email from them. They've opened the doors to the 100-inch Hooker too, and you can have a half night with a group of up to 20 people for $2,000, and a full night, which is till 4 a.m. in the morning, for $4,000. If you haven't been, appreciate it.
Yeah, it is an interesting experience to be at those telescopes. We've done it through aerospace, where we were given a tour of the facility and also did some stargazing through those telescopes. You can see galaxies and you can see novas and shockwaves from supernovas and very interesting objects in the sky. So this is an amazing experience for those that are interested in that. Okay, and finally, a quiz.
Oh, different.
When was the first asteroid day?
When was the first asteroid?
Some billions of years ago.
When?
Some billions of years.
I think 29
million?
28.
I don't know. But I don't know, whenever the dinosaurs.
I think Nahum was going to be
Yes. So the first asteroid day, right?
Okay.
Right. I think that if we increase
65 million.
I wonder who the artist was.
Well, the artist was the producer of the IMAX movie.
Ooh.
And he sent it to me yesterday.
Really?
Yes. So he's also an artist, besides being a producer of movies.
And he used to talk here.
Yes, he used to talk here, that's right. You know, he just doesn't have any new material to talk about, but he talked here at least 3 or 4 different times. And we are good friends and keep in touch. And so he sent me this greeting cards for Asteroid Day, and he said you can share it with your friends. And this is his own work. First Asteroid Day happened 65 million years ago and 24 years. Yeah. With that, safe world. Thank you very much for joining. If there's anybody online, thank you for joining today. And we have just concluded the Asteroid Day 2024 event. Many thanks to Ken for organizing this. He deserves praise for all of the hard work that we've done in the last several months, organizing this event, lining up interesting talks. Thank you, Ken. You're amazing.
And you too. Thank you for doing all the work to organize this.
Thank you all for coming. And, when I walked in, there were like 20, quite a few people here.
Yeah, you'll come. No. The day we Mr. Sneed can be.
Very good. Well, enjoy the rest of the evening, folks.
Yes, thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone. And if there's anybody online, thank you again.
Thank you.
When is the recording going to be?
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the whole day.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Signing off.
Bye.
Bye.